It's the Mindstate Marketing Hour coming to you live from an international location, the international dynamic duo with the #1 rated behavioral science podcast, the Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach. Will, I'm going to run this intro. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's get it going.
So this intro reminded me, this is the Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach. Today's episode is called From 2 Failures and 1 Success. You know, reading this reminded me back in the day, I was in the little skit, and it was called 2 Hits and a Miss. And it was 2 guys singing, and then I was dressed as the miss, and we sang it.
Well, yeah, when I came up with the title, I thought 2 failures and 1 success. I figured most people would think like there'd be like somebody awesome as a third party, and you and I were the 2 failures. I was like, maybe that's not the right title, but whatever gets them on the show, I'll use it to my advantage.
Well, it's the Mindstate Marketing Hour where we get to hang out with a real scientist, Will Leach. He's the author of Marketing to Mind States. I don't have my travel book, Will. As you can see, there's the book. If you hadn't read this book, if you're on the beach and you're not reading this book, then there's something wrong, because your messaging is not talking to the states of mind that the folks that are considering your solution are probably in, and therefore you've got a one-size-fits-all message. So beach reading, Mindstate Marketing.
Now tell the crowd out there, what beach are you at today?
So I'm in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. It's a beautiful day in Banderas Bay. We're surrounded by mountains. You can kind of see the mountains and the reflection back there. It's one of the most beautiful places in Mexico. I highly recommend it.
Hey, I'm glad to see you over there. You look relaxed, my friend. That's what counts.
Well, I just brought the hat today for a prop. I thought it would be cute.
Oh, yeah, you kind of look familiar. Okay, that's the guy I remember seeing. Good for you. It's good to see you again.
I got a little tans. So how to use science to connect with your clients. And if you want to learn more, be sure to go to the mindstategroup.com. So today we're going to talk about what you can learn from 2 failures and 1 success. Let me turn the music off here, Will, and we'll get to talking about this. Where's this topic coming from, brother?
Yeah, you know what? It was, I came up with this idea about 2 weeks ago. And the reason why was I was at a conference and I saw one of my students, so I teach at Texas A&M University. One of my students was speaking, and he runs an ad agency in Peru. And he did something that you never see on stage. At least in my experience, I never see on stage. He did a presentation on his failure. And he talked about a project that he massively just messed up really bad. And when he did that, he said, he talked about what he learned from it. And I thought it was really kind of vulnerable, actually, to see that. And he was like, if I would have known now, back then, the things I would have changed. But I thought it was a really great way of explaining concepts to people in the audience. He was focused on failures and something that he did bad. And I thought, you know what, that's a neat way to learn. And so I started thinking, what if, I talked about, and maybe you got some too, 2 failures in business. I mean, there's lots of personal failures. I didn't make shortstop in my 8th grade junior high team. I don't want to talk about that this time. But then I also say, hey, let's end on a high note, something that, I learned from a time that I was successful in business. And I thought it was a really interesting way of presenting some information. So that's what we're going to do today.
Well, that's excellent. So let's start off. So now you're going to talk about a time that you failed.
That's right.
So give us a little backstory and why this one is important.
It is. So this is my first story here, when it was a time where I potentially cost myself a New York Times best-selling book because of my ego. Steve, do you believe it? Because of my ego.
No, you've got an ego, Will?
I got one. I got one of these things, and it cost me. It's costed me many things, but in this case, I don't know whether or not we would have been a New York Times bestselling book, but I will tell you about an execution that I did and a strategy that I failed. And looking back on it, it was because of my ego. So, this little book here I wrote here called Marketing to Mind States came out in 2018. But, and you've written a book as well, writing the book is only the start. There's a whole other part. If you're an author out there that, if you aspire to be an author, it's about marketing the book. Like there are tens of thousands of books, maybe hundreds of thousands of books that are written every year. And the vast majority of those books fail to reach 100 buys. Vast majority of them. Why? Because they're not marketed. Hey, guess what? I'm a marketer, Steve. So I figured I should be able to do this pretty well. So I had a 3-part strategy. You could probably relate to this. And I called it this strategy. I said, first, I have awareness of my contacts. I'm going to use my email list to let people know. It was a small email list, but I'm going to let them know that I have a book. Secondly, I called it awareness of their contacts, which was influencers, trying to find influencers in my space. And these guys are my heroes, right? Dan Ariely, Roy Sutherland, all these people behind me. If you guys can see the books, I mean, I got big heroes that I'm here in the behavioral sciences space. So I wanted them to be aware of my book and then help me use, their influence to help, basically give me a promote it a little bit for me, blurb, etc. And then I had a third thing was awareness of any contact, which is social media. Just get it out on social media. So I had a 3-part strategy. And I'm going to focus on this second one, which was make my book aware to these influencers. So I didn't have a personal relationship with these influencers. These people are already New York Times bestsellers. But I got a whole bunch of I love this world. I love the space that I'm in, behavioral science. I have people that I look up to, like I said, Dan Ariely, Nir Eyal, Natalie Nahai, Steve Jenko. There's a whole bunch of these great people. So I said, and they have big followings, in fact. So I said, I'm going to send my book to these people and ask for a blurb. So here's what I did. I wrote an email. I'm going to read this email to you, Steve, and then not all of it, but most of it. And then I'm going to ask you for your opinion. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this was actually to Rory Sutherland, who is the vice chairman of Ogilvy, and he is the head of all of their behavioral science. He's a big deal. You go to YouTube, you look up Rory Sutherland. He's awesome. He's hilarious, but he really has this ability to take behavioral science to kind of layman terms. So here's the email I wrote him. And I wrote this same version of email to about 25 people, pretty much the same email. And I said, hi, Rory. Hope you're doing well. You don't know me, but Orlando Wood from System 1 introduced me to your work back in 2012, and it simply changed my life. Your words changed how I conducted marketing research at PepsiCo and even inspired me to leave and start my own company, TriggerPoint, to help brands use behavioral science in marketing. In fact, your videos have been so inspiring that I decided to write my own book on how to apply behavioral science to marketing. So I wanted to shoot you this email to send to you an official PDF copy of my new book, Marketing to Mindstates, the Practical Guide to Applying Behavioral Design to Research and Marketing. This book is officially launching on October 30th, 2018, but I'm sending you a PDF version today. And in short, the book was written to be a practical guide to applying a behavioral psychology and behavioral economics to advertising and customer experience. My intent was to make behavioral design more approachable and usable for marketers, researchers, and creative teams. So I kept it at a very high level. In short, it's not a book written for you and your deep knowledge. Rather, it's a book for someone who has never heard of or only slightly heard of these ideas before, and they just want to apply them to messaging. So it includes my behavioral activation model and a step-by-step instructions to integrate behavioral research and design into creative strategy and tactics. I really hope you like it. If you find it valuable, I would greatly appreciate a quick comment or a blurb from or for my website and or social media. Your words specifically would go a long way to inspiring others in our space to take a look once it's officially out. The blah, blah, blah. Here's how you can download the book, blah, blah, blah. Hope you find it compelling and enjoyable to read. Take care, Will Leach. So overall, what do you think about the email?
So you start off really good. It's pretty much what I would say. It's like, but it's, I think what's disappointing, not about your email, what's disappointing is it doesn't move them. They don't, it would seem like, hey, here's another guy in our space. I'm going to hop on there and beat the drums for him.
Steve, you are you're brilliant, man. You are brilliant. Because let me tell you, so I sent this email out to 25 people, followed up with emails, and I heard back from exactly 0 people. Mm-hmm. Not one person emailed me back. I didn't get bounce backs, by the way, which would presume that it was a personal email. It wasn't from a service. So I think what you said was exactly right. I think as I read it now, it reeks of desperation. Right. But I didn't know that time. So this is where my ego came in, and it's only upon reflection. So out of my 3-pronged strategy, this by far was the worst strategy. Other strategies worked pretty well, and we became a bestseller on Amazon. We never got close to New York Times. But when I look at it back at it now, the number of times I said I or me or my was like over the top. I just kept saying my model, my book, this is my passion, this. And what I think I was doing looking back is that these are my heroes. And because of that, I think I was trying to almost prove to them that I was worthy.
Yeah.
Right. And I kept saying, here's what I'm pretty smart. Right. I wrote this book. I was at PepsiCo. I mentioned PepsiCo. I didn't have to. I talked about how I knew this other person, Orlando Wood, who's maybe special. Yeah. And so I think it was just like me trying to build myself up and getting my own self-esteem up and running to feel like I could belong with these people. And so, this one really failed really, really miserably. In fact, one of the people I saw at a conference, I won't tell you his name, but I saw at a conference and I asked him if I could have breakfast with him. He was very nice. I didn't realize how nice he was. And I asked him, did he know me? He goes, yeah, I recognize you. And he couldn't really place it. But I said, well, my book came out. I saw him about a year later at a conference. And I said, yeah, my book came out about a year ago. And I wrote you an email and I was asking for a blurb. He's like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember that. I kind of remember that email. And so he got it. He remembered it. But I think he remembered it because of the desperation. And that I gave him no reason why he should do that. Like and here's what I learned. Persuasion is not about you, right? Yeah. It's not about when you're trying to persuade somebody, you have to talk about, and I talk about this in my book for God's sakes, right? I talk about it in my book. But what I found is that if you don't tell somebody kind of what it's in it for them, if nothing else, even if not like financially what it's in it for them, but they could help, move the industry along. They could be something that would make me maybe stroke their ego as opposed to using 3 paragraphs. And that was a long email anyways, which was stupid looking back on how bad an email it was. Because it was literally, my guess is it's about 400 words when I look at it right now. But I was constantly trying to convince them that I'm worthy of their attention. I'm worthy of their blurb. And really, persuasion is never about you telling other people how great you are. Persuasion is always talking about how great they are and how you recognize that and can make them greater. It's always about them. And so, that time that I failed, I look back now and I cringe because of the desperation in the email. And it came from with good intentions. But I learned something like just follow the book basically, and maybe you'll get to a little bit better place.
And it's kind of disappointing because I think, when I was listening to your letter, I was feeling, I did the same, I published a book as well. And it's hard to write a book. And you would think there would be some camaraderie about folks that have written a book too. And that I just think about, hey, this guy went through this emotional process of writing down what they believe and actually putting it out there for the world to critique, if you will. It's quite a vulnerable thing.
Yeah, we're in a club, right? There's like a club. Yeah.
So you would hope, since it's your first one, you would hope that someone would recognize, oh my gosh, look at vulnerable Will. He's in that stage I was in. I'm going to step in and give him a little push right there. But here's the truth. And my mom said it to me. She said, Steve, you're not going to always get by on your good looks. Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, let me show you. But she was right. Out of the gate, she was right. And that's the thing. You still have to earn your chops no matter where you are and how you feel.
Mm-hmm. Amen. How did you end up getting blurbs for your book then?
Yes, I did. I tricked a couple. So anyway, I sent a video and I just go, look, one of them was the chief operating officer for HubSpot, but I promote HubSpot in my book, right? And I had met him and developed a relationship before. And so I was able to kind of write on that little part there. Plus I interviewed him for my podcast. as well. So I did a little bit of a different strategy where I kind of worked that in, as, and if you're open to it, can you also do this? But I made sure to give and to promote them in the book as well. I had one I was really disappointed. It just crickets. I watched.
You had the personal relationship with them too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I was like shocked that they didn't. Yep. They didn't even. I watched the deal with Scott Adams. He's the Dilbert guy.
I love Scott Adams.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So he had one episode where he goes, "Don't send me a book. I won't read your book." But this one guy did, and I wanted to brag on the persuasive application of what this guy did. But 10 minutes of that preface is, "Don't send it to me because I'm not going to read your book." Right. But it was all the way the guy packaged it and sent it to Scott that persuaded him. You have to be on your persuasive game.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because I guess they get all sorts of folks sending them, "Hey, would you read my book?" "Oh, sure. I'll sit down and spend 5 hours of my life reading through your book. And I never heard you before."
Yeah. And I'll write something for you that has my name on it. So in case you blow up in some way, I'm attached to you too. So that's really, there's a lot of incentive to go out of their way for you. Yeah. It was a bad learning that I have, but something I took away, so that was good.
So here's a good question for you. Out of curiosity, how far did you get on your looks?
That's for you, buddy.
I barely got out of high school. I mean, this is so funny. I was president of the class, but I was washing dishes at the local steakhouse every night. That's how far my looks.
Yeah, you peaked at high school, right?
Yeah, here's another one. Will, I agree. Roy Sutherland is awesome.
If only that was Rory right now. That'd be great if his picture popped up. Then I'd say, "You should have read my book." So yeah, that was my first. That's my first time I failed that I wanted to tell you guys.
Okay, so all right, now let's talk about the time you really failed.
All right, I got another story. I'm gonna escalate it a bit. So not only did I once, possibly cost myself, you never know, a New York Times bestseller, fingers crossed. I actually blew up a multi-million-dollar acquisition once and cost myself tens of thousands of dollars. And it was a very humbling experience. So let me tell you what happened to me in 2018. I was on a call, I was on a business trip, and I went to go see a company that I was pitching them business. And little did I know that I walked into a meeting where they were going to pitch me being acquired. So came out of the blue in a meeting. I had no idea what to expect. And basically after a couple of hours, I realized, oh my gosh, they are here to court me for an acquisition. It was an international company. And I immediately hit off with them. I knew some of the people anyways behind the scenes, but we just connected. Their CEO, myself, we connected. Our values aligned, the vision aligned. It was a match made in heaven, Steve. Like, I left that office feeling really good. And more importantly, for the next couple of months, as we went through all the due diligence, the letter of intent, everything else, I never wavered. I loved this company. I loved the mission. I loved the vision. So much so is I did the one thing that almost every company that's acquired tells you not to do, which is don't stop running your business while this stuff happens, because you never know. Steve, I don't listen to people's advice. Like, I love this company, right? So I stopped talking to many of my clients. I finished out my projects, of course, but I wasn't trying to sell my business. I started trying to promote their business. So I flew out to different countries. I explained to them my model. I taught them how to use the book because we were going to do something amazing. It's still a great vision. I loved what the vision was. So at one point we started seeing clients, joint clients, kind of like I had some of the same clients, and we'd go to them together and kind of not tell them exactly what was happening, but it was pretty apparent. Like there's something happening, a partnership or something. These two companies are coming to me to talk together in the same room. There's probably something happening. So we were kind of going around making our kind of tour, if you will. And on that trip, my lawyer calls me and says, "Hey, we got the contract. So we had already negotiated everything. It was basically, you're going to look at the contract. We're going to negotiate last little bit details. We're probably within 2 to 3 weeks is my guess. And then we're going to sign a deal, right? So we're that close. We are that close. And this is life-changing money. You know, it's for me anyways, it was life-changing money. So the money was going to be great. The experience I thought was going to be great. So my lawyer, I landed on a Friday and he goes, "Hey, Will, can you come by the office tonight?" So I landed like 5 o'clock in Dallas. "Can you come by the office tonight?" Which is kind of weird for a lawyer, right? Because they don't want to be working on Friday night. But she said, "Sure." So I meet him. I didn't go home. I went right from the airport to his house and he tells me about the contract. And it's a big stack of papers. I don't know how to read it. Now, this guy had been with me the whole time. Like, he was my lawyer the whole time. So him and my acquisition consultant were working together, Steve. And so he said, "Hey, Will," he said, "I got the contract. There's some things in here that, you know, we're not going to agree to, but this isn't standard stuff. They're going to ask for things. We're going to come in the middle. It's not really a big deal." He goes, "But, you know, I'm looking at some of the details." He said, "Will, do you like Trigger Point?" Which is my company at the time, right? And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Now, are you making money? You know, good money?" I go, "Yeah, I'm doing good." He's like, "So tell me again, why do you want to sell?" And it was this weird moment of like, what? Like you've been with me the whole time. And he wanted me to say it. He wanted me to say it out loud. And so I kind of was talking a little bit. And he goes, I told him some things that I wanted or whatever. He said, "Well, let me tell you what I read in this contract." And he basically, in the details of the contract, he said things like, "Okay, there's these numbers that you're supposed to make, your revenue goals for you to get the big payout, right? So there's a multi-year payout." And he's like, here's what I see in this contract. I see that you're going to be traveling 48 weeks a year to make this happen. Wow. And he goes, "I see that you're going to have a staff of about 40 people. You're going to have to run this US, part of the deal is running US operations." And he said to me, "I just didn't think that's what you wanted to do with your life." Now, he knew me from church. So he goes, "I just didn't think that's what you wanted to do with your life." And he wasn't telling me, and he's going to make a lot of money off this. He makes money off the, the continued relationship and the acquisition. And I said, "I don't think I want to do that." And he's like, "You should probably go home and talk to your wife, because that's what this thing says." And he had said something basically, "What part of the big fucking check don't you realize?" Which was, when they give you that money, that means that your IP, your ideas, your life, what part of that don't you understand? It's now theirs. So I went home. I talked to my wife. We had, kind of wine on the back patio. This came out of left field. She had no idea. She was aligned. She was like, "I agree, with you." And we sat down and we talked it through. And we kind of went through Saturday like that, on Sunday like that, because I had to do something, because they're like asking me where we're in the contract. We got to come back with a counter. And on Monday, I said, "I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can actually sign the thing." So basically, the whole deal imploded, not because of a financial thing, not because of a due diligence thing or a legal thing. It imploded where I learned that what they were offering me and what that was going to do to my life was too much to sacrifice, even for the big fucking check, like they say, right? So I remember, because of that, where I cost myself is I had to pay all those consulting fees, all those legal fees. I thought I was going to get sued by that company, but we had it to where we were okay on that, because I was a little bit worried about that. But like I told you, Steve, I stopped working on my clients. I stopped trying to pitch business. I stopped my innovation platform, because I kept thinking, why would I do that? I'm going to have another company here that's going to take care of that stuff. I'm going to sell all this stuff to this other company. So not only did I cost myself like real tangible tens of thousands of dollars in fees, but I also I've never to this day, I haven't reached that revenue threshold, because we were having a banner 2 years before then. I haven't reached that threshold now, and that was 4 years ago. So what I kind of learned was this, guys, is be very clear on how you personally define success versus culture. So culture tells you, at least in America, that your job is to build your business, scale your business, sell your business, take on investment capital, scale your business, sell your business. You do the same thing, and that's how you become successful. I'll put those air quotes. That's how you become successful. Very few books are written about the guy who decided to keep his company small and have a family-owned business and one day leave that company to his kid. Like, very few business books are written that way. Our culture loves the idea of showing the common man become a billionaire. They love that story. Persevering, growing the business, the Mark Cubans of the world, that. So what I kind of learned from that, guys, was you have to be very clear on how you define success versus having the financial success or the car success or culture, whatever culture tells you, because I had that success. Like, this was life-changing money for me, Steve. You know, we both came from a similar background, and this was real money. And when it was my lawyer, those blood suck, you know, those lawyers, my lawyer was one who said, I don't think you should move forward because I don't think this is what you want. And that changed everything for me. And, you know, to this day, we have next couple of years, our happiest years as a family. I've been a better father. I'd be a much worse husband, much worse, you know, a worse father if I would have taken that road. So anyways, I blew up a multi-million-dollar acquisition, but I actually probably benefited from it from a personal standpoint.
Yeah, it may be termed a failure by culture standards, but by your internal compass, you probably avoided a big bullet.
Yeah, but you don't feel that at the time, right? Has it ever happened to you? Like, I cried. Yes. I don't cry very often. I was crying multiple times because you're so sure of yourself. You're so sure, like, you've thought it through. At least I did. I thought everything through. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't happening on a Monday through a Friday and we're done. Like, this was months and months of thinking about it, meetings, flying all over the country or all over the globe. And so then to realize that you the whole time were deceiving yourself, that's emotionally really tough, because you start looking and questioning your own self. Like, why couldn't I have seen that before? Why didn't day one didn't I see that, right?
Why did it take an attorney to help me? To back it, right? Yeah, I was thinking of that when you were telling the story. Is like that shocked you when here's this guy that you hire to keep you out of legal trouble is asking you, but in your personal life, is this congruent with what you want? And you're like, I'm enamored by the cultural sexy thing that we're all programmed with on movies and music and everything.
Yeah, it's so important, guys, to like have that compass set. And for some people, it's awesome to have that compass as financial. I totally get it, you know. Or sometimes that compass is absolutely personal and being the best father ever. And that's one of my partners. That's his compass and that's his kind of true north. But if you don't have that, then you just ride these roller coasters until somebody tells you something like my lawyer did, right? Saying, are you sure that's your true north? Are you sure that's your true north destination? And you don't want that. You want to be able to look at your compass every day and know you're going in the general direction of your life. You're going to sit back and look at your life one day when we're old and more bald than we are today, and you're gonna have to reflect on your life and just make sure that you reflect that you did the right things, you know, for you. It's important.
Yeah, I think that's a great lesson there, Will, is that sometimes we can get caught up in the shiny things and miss what's important to our family. Imagine being gone 48 weeks a year.
48 weeks, man. Global company. Yeah. Basically is what he said. And I took the guy does business deals all the time. I mean, what would that have done, right? We would have had a much bigger house. We would have had some really cool, sexy things, probably a private school here and there. But yeah, I don't know, man. Looking back, I don't know. Yeah, I do know. That's not for me anyways. That wasn't the right thing for me.
All right. Awesome lesson. We got some comments. Hang on here.
All
right. That story, Will, should be chopped up and be added to Instagram stories and TikTok. There's not enough of those stories that relate so much to so many entrepreneurs. All you see are the big stories you mentioned of start, grow, and exit at billions. Your story is way better.
Yeah, you know, thank you for that. You're right, because you're absolutely right, as a matter of fact, because I looked for those books afterwards, and I couldn't find any of those books or stories, right? I found this one website one time that somebody is, and I imagine it's still up there, where it was an Excel sheet or a CSV file that basically said a startup, here's what their valuation was, and then here's why they failed. And that's the only thing I could find that really talked about entrepreneurs failing. One website. I did a pretty decent look. I'm sure there's others, right? But I did a pretty decent look. And so you know what? That's a great idea. I have to get my agency on that and see if they can chop up some videos for me.
Yeah, I wonder who that agency is. Maybe you'll see her on the golf course today.
Yeah, really. I'll have a talk with her. Thank you very much for that comment. I think you're right.
All right. The time that you were a success.
All right, now you can hopefully learn something from when I was successful. And actually, it is more of a career kind of topic, I think. But I could tell you a story behind it. But I look back at my career. I get asked this question from my students all the time, and they'll say things like, what's the secret to owning your own business, or what's the secret to success? And it's usually around business success or whatever. And I'll always say this, and I look back at my career, and I know that I'm successful in how I define success because I've merged two passions. So first thing I always say is, if you're going to go into business, find a passion, because it's really hard job, guys. Emotionally, it's draining. Physically, it's draining. It's going to take a lot from you. So you better have it as your passion, because if you're selling insurance and you hate insurance, life can get really tough. It's a great job, but if you don't love it, life can get tough, and you may want to give up on it, things like that. So what I would tell you is, find a passion. But more importantly, I think, is find a second passion and try to merge those things. So Steve, we have a golf tournament in our neighborhood this week, an LPGA event. And I was talking to, we were housing one of the women golfers here, right? So a lot of them don't make a ton of money. So we house them, and they don't have to worry about hotels and things like that. So she played for Duke University a couple of years ago, I guess. I think she's 25, so I don't know when she did. But she talked about the importance of finding two passions. And I was like, I tell my students the same thing. She loves golf and she loves stats. She loves statistics. Like, she got her degree in statistics. So that's what she does. She was smart enough to say, really, there may be a day where I can't be a professional golfer any day. What am I going to do? And what she thought of, she's like, I could certainly try to be a statistician and work as an actuary or whatever, but I don't love that enough. I know I love golf, but I'm not going to be the best golfer ever. So what if I merge the two? And she thought about helping engineering companies design better shafts and, golf equipment. I'm not a golfer, but I thought to myself, yes, that's what you want to do. You want to find two passions. You're in the sports world, golf. You're also a statistician, engineering concepts. Work for a company that now you can be the translator between the engineers of that company and the golfer. That's a great place to be. And so when I look back on my career, I did something similar, but I didn't know it at the time. But I'm smart enough now to realize what I was doing. I found marketing research when I was in grad school. I didn't know anything about it. I'd never heard of that. And it became a passion. Understanding, why people do what they do, that became a huge passion for me. And it carried me from 25 years old until about 33 years old. I love it. And to this day, I still love it. Then when I was 33, I discovered Dan Ariely's book, Predictably Irrational. And I started reading all these books behind me, and I love behavioral science. And you know me, like I think I've talked about, I stopped doing Ironman stuff. I stopped watching football. All I wanted to do was read this stuff. I go to the beach like you. I wear the hat, and I'd have a behavioral science book, Steve. That's what I did. So I found these two passions. I married those together into a company called Trigger Point. Now it's called the Mindstate Group. And because of these two passions, I was able to write a book. And in that book, I talk about behavioral science and my experience as a marketing researcher. Boom, I put a book together. That book allows me to speak all over the world. It allows me to have clients and work with incredibly smart people on incredibly, difficult problems. I get to teach it to universities. I get to have a podcast with you. I mean, like, those passions took my life in a totally, totally different direction. So what I learned from this idea of merging two passions, and I guess I would tell you that by doing that, I'm certainly distinct in the industry, but I'm also happy and fulfilled. Like, I don't hate my job. I don't go to work. I have bad days, but I don't hate my job. I don't hate my career. I love what I do. And what I would tell you, if you have those two passions and you stay within those two passions, maybe three, but try to build something that incorporates two of your passions, I would tell you that, I had this comment a year ago, and I mentioned on the show, but, this person told me that we get caught up in thinking that we're going to reach a destination in our career, and that's the day that we'll be happy. It's the big payout idea, right? Steve's like, when I sell my company, that's when I'll be happy. Until then, just grind it out. Now, this guy was in his 70s, and he sold a company for the big money. And 3 weeks later, he realized he made a huge mistake. And in fact, he walked away from money because they wanted him to stay years to get the big payout. He ended up walking away. And what he learned was, I really was successful on the journey. I didn't realize it, because I was living my passions. I was just in this current. He talked about this current. He's like, your job, if you live in two passions, if you're doing something you love every day, that journey is success. And you want to stay on that path. You want to stay in that current. When you get off that current, when you sell your company, when you decide to do something totally different, be careful, because if you're outside of that current, you're going to find that maybe the destination you wind up at is not your passion. And that makes your life a lot harder. This guy was in his 70s. He was just being a great mentor to me. But what I learned there was destination is not the success. What really is the success is staying within your passion current. So if you can take anything away from me on that, I'm fulfilled today. I can keep doing my job for another 20 years. And I still think I'll be as passionate about it as, in 20 years as I am today, because I'm living that, something that fulfills me personally. So you got to figure that out for yourself and live in that stream. Uh-oh, Steve. Are you just locked in of like excited? Uh-oh. All right. Well, we may have lost Steve because I see that he is locked up. So I'm going to keep it going. He may be trying to talk to you. Hopefully you guys can hear me as well. But I did want to just share with you, like I said, these 2 failures and that 1 success. And I'm hoping that you learned something from it. Hopefully you don't make some of the same mistakes I made, or if you do, you learn something out of it as well. So Steve's going to join me back in a second, but this is the time in the show where we talk about the 3 questions. So what I did here is Steve usually bounces questions up to me to ask me kind of, what's going on in life, or, what are we working on? So first thing I would tell you is, in terms of things I'm working on, I would tell you that right now I'm working on artificial intelligence to identify subconscious drivers of people's mind states that relate back to my book, but also then how do we use those insights, artificial intelligence, to design advertising, the copy as well as the visuals. So that's got me really excited lately in really trying to make my work more applicable to people who write copy, people who design advertising. So that's the first thing I do. Second thing that I'm real kind of excited about is right now is I'm doing a lot more training and teaching than I used to do as well. So that's got me kind of excited about helping others apply these insights and these things to their business. So that's kind of some of the stuff I'm working on. And so I guess Steve isn't going to join us. So tell you what, guys, I'm going to go ahead and I will close us out from the Mindstate Marketing Hour. So I want to thank you guys so much for being a part of the show. Thanks for the comments. I really appreciate it very much. If you are looking at your business and you're thinking, I would love to have a conversation with Will about my advertising. Do I think it's working? Do you want to run something by me? Actually, I'm doing somebody's website for free this week, just to look at their website and give them some pointers. Let me know. So if you want to do that, go to the mindstategroup.com and you can see these red boxes, which says book time with Will. If you do that, you have to give me your name, your email address. You could book a time on my calendar, and you and I get to know each other a little bit. And if you want to run some ideas past me, great. I may be able to help you. Maybe I won't be able to help you, but that's okay. If I can help you, I'll give you some advice. And if I can't, then hopefully I know somebody that can help you. So guys, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Thank you so much for being part of this show. Hope you learned something. And with that, you guys have a great weekend and a great week, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.